All right, so I have 101, so let's get started. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Unless you're, as Ness as asking me earlier, who here will be joining us. I said most people will be coming from the East Coast, but I'm sure there's a few of you on some different time zones. So thank you for making some time in your day for us. We are super excited to have our guest speaker today. I'm going to introduce her in just a moment. Real quickly, my name is Elise Finney. I am a wealth advisor and the client engagement manager at Argent Bridge Advisors. And if you're not familiar with our firm, I'm guessing you were invited by someone who is. And we are a independent firm located in Northern Virginia. We help families and individuals, widows, inheritors, all kinds of people going through life transitions. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out afterwards. Today, we really wanted to focus on something that has been in the news. You probably can't go a day without hearing about something that happens to someone that might be important to you, that might be somebody who was attempted as a victim of fraud or scams. And so this topic has become really important to us, and we want to make sure that we dedicate some of our time addressing this with our clients. And what better way to do that than to bring on an expert from Charles Schwab? So I'm going to turn it over to our guest speaker in just a moment. Quickly, just want to introduce her. This is Vanessa. She goes by Ness Harper. Ness is a senior manager with Charles Schwab. She's responsible for supporting any of the advisor service protection prevention program, which includes implementing policies and controls related to risk mitigation, educating advisors like our team here at Argent Bridge Advisors and internal business partners on fraud prevention, as well as performing research and identifying fraud trends related to fraudulent activity. Ness has been with Charles Schwab for 29 years and has spent 24 of those in her career with Schwab in the fraud investigations. So we are super happy. Ness did a in-person seminar for us back in, I think that was in May, and it was just really well received. We wanted to make sure that we open this up to a broader audience and by having something on a webinar today. So thank you, Ness, for joining us.
It is a pleasure, Elise, and thank you so much for the warm welcome and that introduction. And good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're located. As Elise mentioned, I'm Ness Harper, and I am excited to be here to share my knowledge with all of you on this important topic. So I'll be diving into the topic where we'll focus on protecting what matters, spotting scams, and safeguarding your assets. Now, some of you may be familiar with this topic. And so my goal is not to reiterate what you already know. I am hoping that I can just raise awareness and deepen your understanding on this important topic, as well as spark some meaningful conversation for you after this presentation. So let's take a look at the agenda for today. So during my time with you today, I'll be discussing the threat landscape. I'll talk about the common fraud methods that scammers or fraudsters use to help them facilitate fraud and successful scam incidents. I'm going to highlight the common fraud scams and ways that you can protect yourself. And I have three words, that I want you to take away with you by the end of today's presentation. And you're going to hear me say these three words throughout today's presentation: trust, but verify. So I'm going to say that again: trust, but verify.
Real quickly, Ness, I just wanted to just say one quick housekeeping thing. If you sent in a question in advance, Ness has already received those questions, so she will make sure she addresses them. If anything new comes up, please go ahead and put them in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be monitoring that. And with that, I'm going to turn myself off for a bit and come back when I see something pop up. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. A cyber criminal is nothing more than a bank robber using another weapon. Their motivation is robbery and theft. Let me ask you a question. When is the last time you've heard about a criminal robbing a bank? So just take a moment and ask yourself that question. It happens, but we don't hear about this happening as often, and here's why. You see, cybercrime is more lucrative. And the weapons that these cyber criminals use is technology, the internet, and fraud tactics and scams. You see, there's no silver bullet with cybercrime. The layered defense is the only viable option. So during this presentation, we're going to discuss the layered approach. we're going to talk about the importance of making sure that you add layers of security to help protect your assets, to help protect your identity. The more layers of security you put in place, it makes it that much harder for a fraudster to have a successful fraud attack or attempt or scam attack and attempt. Let's dive into the fraud landscape. You see, the fraud landscape, it consists of 4 risk factors that can create a perfect fraud storm. Some of you may have experienced a perfect fraud storm, but let me talk about the 4 risk factors that create this perfect fraud storm. We have in the very top right, we have internet saturation. This is the connectivity of a particular country to the internet. Now, looking at the United States specifically, 90% of this country has internet access. That's a lot of people who are logging on to the internet. And this is where fraudsters come to attack us through the World Wide Web. You know, think about yourself and all the things that you currently do on the internet. We work on the internet. We go to school on the internet. We buy, we sell items. We do our banking on the internet. Some people have even met the love of their lives where? On the internet. And again, this is where fraudsters come to attack us through the World Wide Web. This can create a perfect fraud storm. Let's move on to the next risk factor that can create this perfect fraud storm, and it's known as Internet of Things. This is the connectivity of a particular, well, the Internet of Things are, let's say, devices that connect us to the internet. You know, think about all those devices that we have in our homes. We have Alexa, that connects us to the internet. We have our cell phones. We have these are devices in our homes that connects to the internet. A lot of our TVs connect to the internet. Now let's move on and let's talk about the third risk factor that can create a perfect fraud storm. And this is known as volunteering information. Now, this is something that's changed significantly over the past few years. As most of us, we have started to leverage what? Social media sites. For example, LinkedIn and Facebook and LinkedIn, Facebook, and what's the other one? Instagram. We've basically put our information out there for the world to see. You know, where we worked, where we went to school. Some people have even put their date of births out there on social media sites. Now we've opened up our identity for worldwide access by people that we have never, ever met. And this can create a perfect fraud storm. And let's move on to the last risk factor in the bottom corner there. We have hacked information. And this is information that isn't provided out on social media. No, this is information that is stolen by cyber criminals. Once this information is stolen, it is put out there on the dark web for sale, which is the black market for criminals. Hacked information. Every time we turn on the TV today, we hear about a new data breach taking place. Again, this is another risk factor that can create a perfect fraud storm. So what you see on this slide are the common fraud methods that can ultimately lead to a successful scam incident. So as we discuss these tactics, you're going to start to see how they're commonly used in combination to commit fraud, identity theft, or account compromises. So let's start with phishing. You know, phishing begins when a fraudster, they contact a target to gain information or to gain access to something. You see, phishing is frequently used to take over email accounts. Once a bad actor has access to your email account, they basically have the keys to your kingdom, and this can lead to a scam. We're going to dive deeper into email account compromise in just a moment. Then we have malware, which is a malicious software script or code that is run on a device, and it basically alters the state or the function of that device without the owner's informed consent. A successful phishing attack can allow fraudsters to install malware onto your desktop, onto your computers, even your cell phones. Malware, when it is deployed, it can do various things. For example, it can capture your keystrokes when you're typing your username and password. Malware can allow cyber criminals to crawl through your device to steal information and to monitor activity. Let's move on and talk about social engineering, which is the use of deception to manipulate individuals into divulging personal information that may be used for fraudulent purposes. Social engineering is the number one vector being used today in the majority of fraud scams. Phishing is a form of social engineering. So if I'm a fraudster and I send you a phishing email, I'm basically trying to social engineer you, trick you into taking an action or providing sensitive information. Then there's spoofing, and this is the act of disguising some form of communication, like an email address, a telephone number, a text message, or even a website. You know, a lot of fraudsters are creating spoofed websites where they're trying to get individuals to land on their spoofed or fraudulent website, thinking that it is a trusted website. Then we have hacked information and data breaches. As I mentioned earlier, hacked information is one of those risk factors that can create a perfect fraud storm. When fraudsters hack websites, they're basically gaining illegal access, right, to devices in those websites to basically steal people's personal information, which they can then use to commit fraud or identity theft. Let me give you a few examples of how fraudsters will layer these tactics. The impersonation fraud tactic is where fraudsters will pretend to be a known source. And what they do is they will layer the impersonation tactic with the spoofing tactic. I'll give you a great example. Some of you may be familiar with the government IRS government scam, where fraudsters call individuals pretending to be a government official. They will spoof the IRS phone number. So when they call these individuals, the IRS phone number will appear to be on their caller ID, when in reality, the fraudsters are using a software to allow them to spoof that phone number. So again, fraudsters will oftentimes layer these fraud tactics, which makes it extremely difficult for you to be able to detect them. Let us move on and let's dive into a little more into email account compromise. And this is a fraud tactic that exploits the fact that so many people, we rely on the use of email to conduct business for both personal and professional reasons. I want you to just stop for just a moment and think about all of the information that you have sitting in your email account right now. Now, you probably have, I would say, if not most, you probably have quite a few of these data points, paycheck stubs or text documents, your email contacts, your account information, calendar events and travel plans, and email exchanges between yourself and your advisor or other people that you know. You may also have some photos that you've sent in emails. You see, all of this information that we have sitting in our emails can be used by a fraudster to commit fraud and to commit identity theft against us. It is so important for us to remember and keep in mind what we're keeping in our emails. And it's important to make sure that we're keeping our emails safe. You'll want to make sure that you have a strong password for your email account. And if your email, if it allows and it has two-factor authentication, you'll want to add that additional layer of security on your email account, which will protect a fraudster from being able to gain access to your email if they were to gain access to your username and your password. So I'm going to pause for just a moment. And Elise, I'm going to see, have we had any questions to come in so far about the risk factors or the fraud tactics that I covered? Okay.
Not right now, but please feel free to add anything into the Q&A box at the bottom or the chat, and we will get to it.
All right, let's do a deeper dive into talking more about, we just talked about the emails. My slides are off here. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. All right, let's do a deeper dive into phishing. Phishing has been around for many years. It is a form, as I mentioned earlier, it is a form of social engineering. Phishing is commonly begins when a fraudster is posing as a legitimate institution or a trusted party. They contact the target through email, through telephone calls, through social media, through text messages, and they're asking that you provide them with sensitive information, or they're asking that you provide them with access to your accounts or your devices. You see, phishing messages, they're designed to look genuine. And they often copy the format and the logos of the organization or that they're pretending to represent. Now, although these phishing emails and text messages, they appear to look official, a lot of times, if you look closely at these phishing text messages and emails, you may see some grammatical errors. You may see some typos. Now, that said, most of these phishing emails and text messages, they have this sense of urgency so that the person that they're trying to target, they're going to miss the red flags and they're going to act impulsively. Also, the messages may contain an attachment that will likely install malware if it's opened or downloaded. It may often contain a link. A lot of phishing emails contain these links that will lead you to a spoofed website where the fraudster can basically steal your information, for example, your login credentials. The bad actor may provide a phone number in their phishing emails or on a spoofed website, because you see, people tend to be less on guard about calling what appears to be a customer service number. So what happens next? The target, they end up calling and talking to someone who they think is a legitimate customer service agent. And then they end up giving up information or giving access to their online accounts or giving access to their devices. What are the red flags to be on the lookout for when it comes to phishing? Be on the lookout for that sense of urgency. Be on the lookout for those, as I mentioned earlier, look out for typos, grammatical errors. Be suspicious of any emails that request your personal information or your sensitive information. Be suspicious of any emails or text messages that you receive or that may have a link in them or have an attachment asking that you click on that attachment. Be on the lookout for unrealistic rewards. A lot of times fraudsters are sending out phishing emails and the phishing emails say, you've won something. These are all red flags to be on the lookout for to help you identify if it is a phishing email, if it is a phishing text message. Always assume the email that you receive is fraud until you can prove that it's not. And it goes back to what I shared earlier, those 3 words: trust, but verify. So what you see on this slide are some of the most common phishing text messages that we're seeing today. And we're seeing a lot of people fall victim to these text messages. The very first one that you see is the Schwab impersonator text message. This is where the fraudster is basically sending a text message and they're saying, hey, for your protection, we have placed a hold on your account. Do you see the grammatical error there? We have placed a hold on your account. And then they include a link. If you were to click on this link, it would probably download malware or virus onto your device, which will allow the bad actor to start controlling your device or capture your username and password when you're logging into your websites. The other text message that we're seeing that's very common now is the false friend text message. I've received it several times where they say, hey, Ness, how are you? And sometimes it'll be a completely different name. For example, to just say, hey, John, are you there? And fraudsters are just hoping that you'll reply back and say, I'm sorry, this isn't John. Once you start to interact with these bad actors, this is when they're able to then start their fraud scams. The most important thing that I share is that whenever I receive a text message and it appears to be from an unknown source, or if it appears to be something that's sort of just out of the ordinary, I delete it. The other text message that we've been seeing that's pretty common now, phishing text message, is the toll fee text message, letting you know, oh, you need to pay this toll fee. If you don't pay it by a certain time, something's going to happen. They'll even include a link or phone number in these toll messages, phishing messages, hoping that you'll either call the number or that you'll click on a link. These are all phishing messages. As I mentioned earlier, when you receive a message, trust, but verify. And it's always good to independently look up phone numbers. If there's a phone number in the text message, independently look up that phone number. If they're saying they're from Microsoft and there's a virus on your computer, independently look up the Microsoft number and call them directly. This will help you to avoid falling victim to a scam. Now, there is a new fraud threat that is associated with the phishing tactic, and it's known as the remote access tool attack. We're calling it the RAT attack. It involves the remote access tool, which is a legitimate tool that individuals can use, and it allows them to control or to interact with the computer or device from a separate location. But fraudsters are now leveraging this legitimate tool that was designed for good. They're now leveraging it to help them facilitate their fraud attacks. Rats are legitimate tools, as I mentioned, but they're used by fraudsters. Fraudsters are using this tool to assist them with being able to monitor your device activity when you're on your computer. They're using the remote access tool to allow them to steal your credentials and to access your online banking accounts. Now, a remote access tool will go undetected if you have a malware or a antivirus software installed onto your device. That's because it's not malware and it's not a virus. As I mentioned earlier, it's a real tool. You know, it's a legitimate tool that fraudsters are now, they've realized that they can now download this tool onto your device unknown to you, and it goes undetected. Let's talk about some of the ways that that you can avoid getting a remote access tool downloaded onto your device. But let me go over a case study with you very first to demonstrate to you how this tool works. So a client received a text message. It appeared to be from their financial institution asking them to verify account information by clicking on a link. The client clicked on the link in that phishing message, and it directed the client to a spoofed banking website. A remote access tool tool was downloaded onto their device, unknown to the client. The bad actor used that remote access tool to gain access to the client's online account. So when the client logged into their online account, the fraudster piggybacked behind them. The bad actor sent an unauthorized wire in the amount of $50,000 from the client's account. All of this happened unknown to the client. The client didn't realize this had happened until they had looked at their online, their account online, and then they saw this $50,000 wire and was wondering, you know, how did this happen? Let me talk about some of the standard practices for avoiding falling victim to a remote access tool attack. Scrutinize every single email that you receive, appearing to be from a known source. You know, I always tell my mom and my dad when they receive emails, assume that it's fraud until you can prove that it's not. Trust, but verify. So always call a known number to you. If you receive an email appearing to be from a financial institution asking that you take an action, pick up the phone. You know, call that institution directly and always use, again, a known number to you. What we've seen a lot of clients do is that they'll call the phone number that's in that phishing email or that phishing text message. They end up speaking with a scammer. So always independently look up those phone numbers and call those numbers directly after you've looked them up. Keep in mind that a virus scan will not detect a remote access tool because, again, these are legitimate tools. So if you're seeing something strange happening to your computer, one of the things you should do is check to see if there's been any recent downloaded apps that you know that you didn't download. And some of the apps that we've seen fraudsters download is called TeamViewer is one of them. AnyDesk is another one. And let's see here, LogMeIn is a third one. So those are three of the remote access tools that we've seen fraudsters download onto clients' devices unknown to them. AnyDesk, TeamViewer, and LetMeIn. So I just went over, as I talked about that case study, I went over some of the standard practices for fighting back against this threat, but let me go over some additional ones with you. Avoid clicking on unknown or unsolicited links. remove recently downloaded apps that you do not recognize. If you have a VIP semantic app that you leverage, always install it on a different device. So that way, if a fraudster were to somehow gain access to your device, they wouldn't have access to your VIP semantic app. You'll want to close your browsers when you're done. So if you're logged into Schwab, Alliance.com, or any website, any banking websites, when you're done, always close out of those websites, because what this does is that if there is a remote access tool that's been downloaded onto your device, or even if there's malware onto your device, the fraudsters will then need to have access to that username and password. And if you're using two-factor authentication, they're going to need to be able to complete that as well. So one of the things we've seen is that sometimes when individuals log into their banking websites, they'll walk away from their computer and leave that website up. And if a fraudster has access to their device, they can just, again, piggyback behind them. So always log out of those sites. And it's important to use a virtual private network when you're logging into banking websites. I'm going to pause again, Elise, to see, has there been any questions for me so far that's come in?
There has had a few come in. So let's start with curious about MFA, the various forms and which is best. I've also had some sites say I can complete a task in their site due to my, I can complete a task on their site due to my VPN masking my location. Are there alternatives to turning off my VPN to allow the site to work? I think he's saying he couldn't complete it, and now,
Couldn't complete it.
yeah.
One of the reasons why that can happen is that you may need to clear out your cache, your browser cache, because old data can interfere with your connection. So that's something that I would suggest that you do, or maybe switch to a different server. Those are two things that I would recommend doing: switching to a different server, and consider just clearing out your browser cache, because again, that old data, it can interfere with your connection.
Okay. Next one is, are there rules about a URL in terms of how it's constructed that would indicate fraud? Kind of like, is there an extra period? Does that make a difference? Assuming something like Microsoft or login.microsoft.com is safe, where something like, let me in is what you said, something like that is not. Is there any giveaway?
For a fraudulent URL, fraudsters are getting sophisticated. So you really have to be looking very closely to it. Sometimes you'll see HTTP S added to that URL, which could be an indication that it is a fraudulent website. Sometimes you'll even see RU at the end, which indicates that it is a Russian URL. So just look carefully at the URL itself. And if you see anything that looks off or suspicious, that could be an indication that it is a fraudulent URL. I mean, I've seen a lot of URLs where you'll see like CA at the end. I don't know what CA stands for, but I've seen CA. I know I've seen RU, which stands for Russia. So just scrutinize it. Look at it carefully. And if you see anything that looks off, use that healthy dose of skepticism and say, you know what, this may be a fraudulent URL.
Okay. Does using a program like RoboForm to input our username and password provide any additional protection to keep bad actors from capturing those pieces of information?
RoboForm.
And specifically because it doesn't have any keystrokes. Does that add an extra layer of protection?
RoboForm. So I'm not familiar with RoboForm. So are you referring to like a password manager maybe?
I think so. And specifically that he said there's no keystroke. So I'm assuming that that's what he meant.
Yes. Password managers are always, I highly encourage using a password manager so that you're not putting your passwords in, right? Password managers have a lot of safety features to them, because once you leverage a password manager, the data in the password managers is encrypted. Secondly, if you were to land accidentally on a spoofed website, The password manager will recognize that it's not the real website and it will not enter the password for you. So yes, leveraging a password manager is definitely one of the ways to go to protect your passwords. Now, if there's malware on your desktop or if there's a remote access tool, this is how fraudsters can defeat that. Because once you log into the website, this is how the fraudster can just piggyback behind you. This is why it's so important to use good cyber hygiene so that you don't get malware on your device and so that you don't get a fraudster installing the remote access tool unknown to you onto your device. I hope
It's
that
kind of
answers your question.
Yeah, they did specify that it was a password manager is what they were asking about. So thank
Okay,
you.
you're
Just
welcome.
because this is also something I think people think about password managers and also identity theft protection. Things like LifeLock and other ones like that. Is that something that you recommend? Is it worth it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I was going to talk about the leveraging LifeLock and Experian, those identity theft and credit monitoring services. Those are great. I use Experian. I absolutely love Experian because if my information is found out there on the dark web, I receive an alert from Experian to let me know. Now, one of the things I always share is that once information is out there on the dark web, you can't get it off the dark web. But what you can do, you can be aware that it's out there, and then you can start putting additional security measures in place to help protect your identity and all of your personally identifiable information. So yes, I definitely encourage leveraging LifeLock, leveraging Experian, freezing your credit. Put a credit freeze or a credit lock on your credit. If you already own your home, you already own a car, and you're not trying to get credit anytime soon, add a freeze on your credit or add a lock on your credit. And this is definitely going to be a roadblock for a fraudster if they were to get access to your personally identifiable information and try to establish credit with your information.
Okay. And then the last one for now is regarding texts and emails, especially right now. Today's a voting day. Lots of things coming in from politicians. Are those phishing texts as well and emails?
You know, it's hard to say because like you said, it is voting season, right? So you're going to get some real text messages, but some of them may be phishing. So trust, as I mentioned earlier, verify. If I receive a message, I'm not going to click on any links in those messages. If it asks me to call a phone number, I'm not going to ever call a phone number in a text message that I receive. I will always independently look up the information. I'll look up the person who it appears is sending me that text message. I'll find their phone number and then I'll call them. So some of those messages may be phishing. Some of them may be valid. Always trust and just verify and never click on links in those phishing messages and avoid calling phone numbers directly because once they get you on the phone, if it is a scammer, this is when they're going to put pressure on you to try to take action or provide them with some information. So to avoid doing that, again, independently look up those numbers to call someone back if you receive a text message with a number and never click on the link in the text message.
Right. That's it for now. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. Let's dive a little bit deeper into talking about scams. What you see on this slide, these are the channels in which scammers are making their connections with their victims. As I mentioned earlier, some of these are the risk factors that can create a perfect fraud storm. Fraudsters are connecting with their victims through social media, online messaging, for example, WhatsApp. They're also making connections with their victims through phone calls and text messages, as we've already mentioned, email, and the good old-fashioned mail. And let me just say, fraudsters are going back to using the good old-fashioned mail. Many years ago, my dad was almost the victim of a sweepstakes lottery scam. He received information in the mail. It looked believable. He called the phone number, spoke with some scammers who convinced him that all he needed to do was pay the taxes and the fees, and then he would receive a large sum of money. It took us months several months to be able to unwind my dad from trying to reach out to these scammers and trying to come up with this money to be able to pay the scammers. So fraudsters are using the good old fashioned mail to help them facilitate their scam attacks. They're also using websites, right? As I mentioned earlier, those spoof websites and those pop-up messages that sometimes we see come up on our devices that is saying this is someone from Microsoft, or this is someone from Apple, or even Amazon pop-up messages. Fraudsters are facilitating those as well. So these are a lot of the ways, and I would say these are the majority of the ways that fraudsters are making their connection with their victims. What you see on this slide are the common scams that we see impacting several individuals. We've created a scam brochure to help educate on all of these scams. And I'm going to make sure that Elise has a copy of the scam brochure, but I'm just going to, that she can share with you, but I'm just going to kind of go through some of these scams. The romance scam is one where fraudsters are basically trying to pretend to be romantically interested in that target. And the romance scam is one where I think a lot of our seniors tend to fall victim, a lot of our vulnerable adults, because they live alone. We have a lot of widowers or widows who fall victim to the romance scam because they're looking to connect with someone. They're looking for companionship. What are the red flags to be on the lookout for the romance scam? First of all, if they start to ask you for money, chances are it is a scam, because that's usually what they do. After they've gained your trust, they're going to start to say, hey, something's happened. Can you help me with the situation? Or, you know, I'm in the military. I'm trying to make my way back to the United States so that we can meet in person, but I need to get some help with getting some of the items that some of the people that I've protected in the villages have given me, some gifts. I need to get those gifts through customs. You know, can you please provide me with some money and some assistance to help me get those items through customs? So again, those are just some of the red flags. There are a lot of different variations to the romance scam. Trust but verify. Let's move on and quickly talk about the investment scam. This is a scam where fraudsters say, okay, you know, high returns, low risk, one-time opportunity. They even create these fake investment platforms where it looks like you are making a deposit. It looks like your portfolio is growing, but it's all a scam. Before you get involved in any type of investment, I encourage you to always run it by your investment advisor first. Always. Let's move on and talk about the emergency scam. The emergency scam is paired with the grandparent scam. This is where fraudsters are basically calling seniors who they believe have grandchildren and pretending to be in trouble or need assistance with either attorney fees, or there's some medical situation that's occurred and they're saying, you know, grandma, grandpa, I need your help. I've been in a car accident. I hit someone. And if I don't get your help, I'm probably going to go to jail. They have these believable storylines, even to the point where they'll have a scammer pretending to be an attorney. They have scammers pretending to be doctors. Trust, but verify. They've even used artificial intelligence to sound like the grandchild. How do you fight back against these scams? Trust, verify, have that healthy dose of skepticism, and consider having a passphrase, you know, for your family, your immediate family. So if someone calls you in need and they don't know that family passcode, you know what? Say, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to do some more research, and I'm going to have to call someone else before I take any action and provide you with assistance. There's the lottery prize scam. That's another one that we see a lot of individuals falling victim to, along with the tech support scam. And I talked a little bit about the tech support scam earlier. Twice the number of victims that we see involved with the tech support scam, they're over the age of 60. Fraudsters know that a lot of our seniors are not very tech savvy, which makes them a sweet spot for scammers to call them and say there's a problem with their computer, or pop-up message appear on their device after they've been searching the internet and they see this pop-up message saying that this is Microsoft, please contact this number. There's a virus on your device. There's even another twist to the tech support scam where they'll say, we need to install some software on your device to protect your device from malware. The tech support scam is one, again, that so many individuals, particularly our seniors, have fallen victim to it. How do you avoid being the victim of the tech support scam? Trust, but verify. You never take immediate action. If they're telling you it's something that's urgent, and most scams are urgent for scammers, this is another red flag. And this is an opportunity for you to just independently look up the name of whomever is calling you and do your research before you take action. The real estate scam is one that's been around for many years, along with the government and the online job scam. We've created, as I mentioned earlier, a brochure that will help you better understand all of these scams. We've also included some questions that you can ask yourself to make sure that you're not falling victim to one of these scams. I'll make sure that Elise has a copy of this brochure and she can share it with everyone after today's presentation. I'm going to pause again, Elise, and ask, are there any questions that's come in so far regarding these common scams?
Yep, I have one more, which is, which products and services are essential protections and which are cost effective? Apple products seem to have some extra protections built in and readily available, things like password manager, VPN, MFA, alongside the walled garden concept. I think this is kind of more specific to Apple products. What can we layer in?
Let me just share with you that I use Apple products. I absolutely love Apple products. I think they're secure. However, there are a lot of great products out there. And rather than me making any recommendations, I can always tell you what I use and why I use them. I think, again, Apple is extremely safe, all of their products. I am going to encourage you to do your research. You can go to a website. The website is called PC, that's P as in Paul, C as in Charles, pc.mag. No, pcmag.com. So that's pcmag.com. If you go to that website, there's a search bar and you can type in anything that you're looking for. What are the top password managers out there? What are the difference in using Apple products versus using, other products that are out there? It will give you the comparisons. It'll tell you the pros, and this website will tell you the cons. I think it's a great website. I tell my family to use this website when they're trying to determine what password manager they want to use, or if they're going to use an Apple cell phone versus an Android cell phone. So again, check out pcmag.com, and I'm sure you'll be able to get a lot of research that can help you decide on which products you should use.
Thanks. I just put that in the chat for everybody.
You're welcome. All right. So what you see on this slide, we wanted to raise awareness of some of the recent bank impersonation scams that we've been seeing through phishing, for example, spoofed websites. We talked about that earlier. There are so many spoofed websites out there today that looks just like a real trusted website. One of the ways to avoid falling victim to landing on a spoof website, I mentioned it earlier, always go to the browser bar, type in the website address. Once you land on the real website, bookmark it or add it as a favorite. And this will keep you from just going to a search engine and typing in Charles Schwab or Bank of America and accidentally landing on a spoofed website. Because again, fraudsters are spoofing, and I'm sure they've spoofed pretty much every bank website out there today. There's also the employee impersonation phishing scams, where fraudsters will do a couple of things. They will either send you a text message, as I mentioned earlier, pretending to be an employee from a bank, or they'll call you directly and pretend to be an employee from a bank. I was recently talking with a friend of mine who fell victim to a bank employee impersonation scam, where someone called her pretending to be with her bank and told her there was a fraudulent transaction in her account. They needed to assist her. She gave them access to her code, her security code, within which allowed them to then gain access to her online account, and they facilitated a $5,000 wire from her account. So the employee impersonation scam is definitely on the rise. If you receive a phone call from someone saying that they're with your bank, as I mentioned earlier, trust but verify. Hang up the phone and say, you know what, I'm going to call my bank back directly and make sure that if there's something that they need to discuss with me, they can discuss it with me then. Investment advice is another one of the bank impersonation scams that we're seeing, where fraudsters are on WhatsApp pretending to be individuals, providing providing investment advice. I've even had two situations where I was told that the fraudsters were taking photos from LinkedIn from bank personnel, and they were creating profiles to make their profiles look believable to these people that they were trying to scam. So if you receive any messages on any type of social media site and someone is trying to provide you with investment advice, always reach out to your investment advisor first. As I mentioned earlier, trust but verify. And then the text alerts, we talked about those earlier. Fraudsters sending those phishing text messages appearing to be from sources, pretending to be from a bank. Some have received them appearing to be from Charles Schwab. As I mentioned earlier, trust but verify. And then the phishing emails, we talked about that earlier as well, where fraudsters are sending phishing emails appearing to be from either a bank, sometimes they could appear to be from Schwab or any financial institution. If you receive an email and you're just not sure, always pick up the phone before you interact with that email, especially if there's an attachment that's in that email or if there's a link trying to get you to click on that link. I'm going to pause for a moment again, Elise, to see if any questions have come in regarding bank impersonation scams.
Not related to that. And I can, it's something about two-party authentication, but I can save it to the end if you prefer.
Okay, let's keep going. We have a little ways to go.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the tech support scam, but I wanted to highlight it again because the tech support scam is one, as I mentioned, that is targeting our seniors. And if you receive a phone call, if you receive an email, if you receive a text message or a pop-up message, assume that it is fraud until you can prove that it is not, because this is one of those scams that we're seeing on the rise right now, where fraudsters are pretending to be with Microsoft, they're pretending to be with Apple, they're pretending to be with Amazon. A lot of individuals have fallen victim to the tech support scam. In 2023, it was reported that $1.3 billion in losses were associated with the tech support scam and seniors. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the tech support scam is $1 billion business for scammers. And the only way we're going to fight back is that we continue to raise awareness, that we continue to have that healthy dose of skepticism, trusting, but verify. All right, let us move on and talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. As I mentioned earlier, AI has made its way into the fraud landscape. Fraudsters are using AI to be able to help them facilitate their fraud scams successfully. They're using something called Fraud GPT. So we're using Chat GPT, but they're using Fraud GPT. And Fraud GPT is a tool that they can purchase out on the dark web for a very low subscription fee. It allows them to basically create sophisticated spoofed websites. It allows them to create sophisticated phishing emails and text messages without the grammatical errors and those typos. So they're making it harder for us to be able to identify if it is a scam or not. How do we fight back? Is continue to use that healthy dose of skepticism, trust, and verify. They're using AI to clone voices, as I mentioned earlier. Consider having a passcode for your immediate family, so that if someone calls you in need, if they don't have that that passcode, you just hang up the phone and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to verify this before I take any action. They're using it, as I mentioned, to facilitate data breaches and be able to hack and infiltrate systems. There are so many ways that fraudsters are using artificial intelligence now. And how do we fight back? We fight back by continuing to raise awareness through education, by trusting and verifying. How do you protect yourself? The only thing that stands between your email and a cyber criminal is a strong password. So I want to encourage everyone listening to today's presentation to make sure that you use a strong password for every website that you log into. 15 characters is what they say, 15 characters, but they also say a passphrase is better than using a password. And if you use a password, you'll want to have uppercase, lowercase letters, a combination of letters and symbols. But someone asked the question earlier about password managers, and I highly encourage the use of password managers because there's so many websites that we log into, and that's a lot of passwords to have to remember. But when you're leveraging a good password manager, a password manager is going to create that unique password for you for every website that you log into. It encrypts those passwords. So someone asked me once, well, Ness, what if a password manager gets hacked? Well, that's a good question. And the data is encrypted in those password managers. So if a fraudster were to somehow hack a password manager, they're going to need an encryption code to be able to get access to the passwords. So again, if you're looking to leverage a password manager, if you're currently looking for one, go to pcmag.com, type in top password managers, and it's going to provide you all of the information, the pros and the cons for using them as well. This slide is one to highlight check fraud, because although people are no longer using checks like they used to, people still use them, and check fraud is on the rise. In 2023, check fraud resulted in $1.3 billion losses for financial institutions across the United States. And this was according to a report that was put out by the American Bankers Association. Checks contain a lot of information about your account. It has your name, it has your address. If that information were to get in the hands of a fraudster, can you imagine what they would do with it? So we encourage leveraging other ways of moving money. For example, use bill pay. You know, I've been able to set my mother and my mother-in-law up with bill pay, so they no longer use checks. Well, they use them maybe frequently, just for a few things, but they're now using bill pay. They're using wires and money links to send money. And if you're going to receive a check in the mail, always ask if that check can be sent to you via an electronic channel, because it's a lot safer if you're using electronic channels versus paper. Paper is just not safe. I know we're getting so close to time here. I am going to quickly get to this slide here, because this is a slide that we always highlight with all of the security measures that I've gone over throughout this presentation. Using that unique password, using a strong password for every website that you log into. Never use the same credentials on more than one website, especially your email and your financial account websites. Use two-factor authentication. It is an added layer of security. I encourage using biometrics. I use biometrics. Biometrics is another way to gain access to your online accounts without having to type in your password. Make sure that you're keeping your devices updated. Limit the information that you share out there on social media, because fraudsters are out there. They're mining for information. They're going to use the information that they find out there on social media to help them create these storylines to be able to scam you. Monitor your activity. If your bank account allows you to receive alerts when there's money movement in your accounts, or when any information has been changed or updated on your accounts, leverage those alerts, because those alerts will keep you in the loop if something happens inside of your account that you did not facilitate. And always keep in mind, never rely on any money movement instructions that you receive in an email. So if someone sends you money movement instructions in an email, and you're going to forward those instructions to your investment advisor to facilitate a money movement transaction in your account, always pick up the phone, call that person using a trusted number again. You would be surprised at how many people have been scammed by receiving money movement instructions in an email that they thought was coming from a trusted source. That trusted source had their email account compromised. A fraudster was sending them those money movement instructions, and those money movement instructions were then sent to the investment advisor. And then it was later deemed as fraud. So always, always, if you're receiving instructions in an email and their money movement instructions, always pick up the phone and verbally verify those instructions with the individual who sent them to you. This is the end of this presentation. I know this was a lot of information for all of you, but I hope this information is something that you'll be able to hold on to and protect yourself from falling victim to scams that are out there today. So Elise, I'm going to pass it back over to you, see if there's any more questions that's come in.
A couple of questions came in. We've got it. We heard it multiple times. So thank you for the trust and verify. We just want to make sure that everyone's guilty unless we prove otherwise. So the opposite if you wound up in court. A couple other questions came in. One is with every, how it's hard to pay attention to everything in this. Let's see, are there general recs that are essential and can we eliminate in terms of access channels, in terms of limit exposure? Does that make sense? This is how she wrote it. Finding time to pay attention to all of this is a key vulnerability. Are there any general recs on what's essential? What can we eliminate in terms of access channels so we can limit exposure?
That's a tough one. So I don't know if there's anything that you can eliminate, but there are things that you can do to protect yourself, right? Because we're going to be on social media. And I did mention, limiting what you share out there on social media, because fraudsters are out there mining for information. But we're going to be on, most of us are on social media sites. The best thing to do is always have a healthy dose of skepticism. Even as we move into the holiday season, I always say that, scammers and fraudsters, they don't take holidays. This is the perfect opportunity for them to kind of beef up their scams, right? And their phishing emails and their phishing text messages. And because we're so busy enjoying the holidays, we may miss something. So always keep in mind, it's important to have that healthy dose of skepticism during the holiday season or any time of the year. Trust, as I mentioned earlier, and verify. And just pause. Sometimes I think we're just in a hurry to reply to different text messages that we receive, or we receive a phone call or an email. Just taking the time to slow down, I think is important. And that's one of the ways that we can help protect ourselves. But as far as eliminating anything, if you want to just stop using social media altogether, that's one of the ways, because we know we use it, fraudsters are using it. So anything that we use, they're going to use it for nefarious purposes. So I think more so just trusting, verifying, having that healthy dose of skepticism is the best way, and putting security measures in place. The more layers of security you have in place, verbal passwords on your accounts, the more security measures you have in place, these are going to act as a roadblock for a fraudster. And it will make it hard for them to have a successful fraud attempt, because once they run into a few roadblocks, guess what they do? They move on to someone else.
Okay, another one is, what about fraudsters recording you? An example, if they record you saying something like, yes, can they use that to play it back and gain access?
It's a great question. Research has shown that all scammers or fraudsters need is about 5 seconds of our voice to be able to clone our voice. And can we get around that? That's going to be very challenging for us to get around fraudsters gaining access to our voice, because we now have our voices on our phones, on our voicemails for our phones and for our businesses. But it goes back to something that I was sharing earlier, is to avoid their scams and how they're using voice cloning AI, right? And deepfake, is to maybe have a password for family members who may call you for an emergency one day. And if they don't know it, that password, you know what? I'm not going to assist them. I have one with my family. My mom is 80. My mother-in-law is 94. We have now given them a password for our family, for our immediate family, so that if anyone were to call them and they don't know that password, they're not going to assist them. But I've also educated them on making sure that they pick up the phone and just call someone else. So I don't know how we can get around um, fraudsters not being able to gain access to our voices, because it's on our voicemail. And all they need, according to research, is just 5 seconds of it. But it goes back to putting some security measures in place to fight back against what they're using AI for.
The family password is a great suggestion. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
then I think just one last, somebody just wanted to kind of add on to the question about other than some of the Apple products.
Mhm.
Just go back over what I know we can go to PC Mag and do our research, but what are you personally using?
Apple.
Okay, so we've
My
got
husband and I
Apple,
have Apple. I have an Apple phone. I have
Experian.
Experian. We use Experian to monitor credit and identity theft. Now, here's the other thing: a lot of banks offer credit monitoring. I know Chase offers it, and a lot of people love it. It's free. If you have a Chase account, I believe it's free for most Chase account holders. But I like the fact that Experian will also tell me if any of my information is out there on the dark web. I can also use Experian to add a lock on my credit, and if I need to request credit, I can go to the Experian app on my phone and I can just unlock and they can run my credit. So that's another great thing about having one of the credit monitoring services versus using Chase, because they have the service, but I don't know if you can add a lock. You can still add a freeze, but if you add a freeze, you will need a pass word to be able to unlift that freeze. But if you have a lock and you're leveraging a credit monitoring service, you can use their app and it's convenient. You can unlock and you can lock it right back. And I've done it
Great.
several times. So I love that.
Awesome. And then just lastly, a lot of people, including myself, saying great job. Thanks for the info, wonderful presentation. So all of those things, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Want to let everyone know that we will be sending a recap, well, a little few notes, and then also some of the handouts that Ness has mentioned. We'll make sure that that goes out to everybody, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks everyone for joining today's presentation. Take care
All right.
and stay
Bye,
safe.
Ness. Thank you.
Bye.